Today, we are rejoicing that it looks like we have the person who killed our daughter. We're so incredibly grateful for all of the hard work.
18. That's how many cold cases one New Mexico police department has reopened just this year. Officers say the success of Katie's Law has a lot to do with it.
You might remember the name Katie Sepich. Her name is back in the headlines. On Friday, the Senate passed Katie's Law, a bill that would help states set up DNA databases for people arrested for felonies.
Victory tonight for one New Mexico family trying to make sure their daughter's murder resulted in meaningful action. President Obama has just signed a nationwide version of Katie's Law. New Mexico has already had Katie's Law on the books since 2007. It's named for former NMSU student Katie Sepich.
A bill to expand the state's Katie's Law is also moving forward at the Roundhouse.
It's a bittersweet week for the family of Katie Sepich.
I'm proud to say that 2 days after what would have been Katie's 32nd birthday, the Senate passed our bill unanimously.
The day after Christmas was Katie's birthday. She would have been 32. And so, we still miss her every day.
Our camera was rolling this afternoon as Albuquerque police took in a suspect in the rape of an elderly woman. 27-year-old Francisco Perez is accused of attacking the 76-year-old victim at Alamosa Elementary School. Tonight, Albuquerque police are crediting a state DNA collection law known as Katie's Law for helping them find Perez.
Welcome to the channel, but before we dive in, hey friends, if you end up liking this video, please hit that subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. Also, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see where everyone's tuning in from. Alright, now let's get started. Catherine J. Sepich, or Katie as everyone knew her, grew up in this quiet but cozy little town called Carlsbad, New Mexico. She was the oldest of 3 kids, and you could always tell she felt a bit of that responsibility thing. But she carried it so effortlessly, with this natural grace. Katie graduated from New Mexico State University with a degree in business, and she was right on the edge of this exciting new chapter in her life, about to start grad school for her MBA, a move that was going to open so many doors for her. Her family often said she wasn't just smart, she was full of energy, super outgoing, and a born leader who knew exactly what she wanted and went after it with everything she had. Her dad, Dave, remembered her with this really warm fondness. She was like a little firecracker from the very start. Her whole life, she was just running full throttle, like 90 miles an hour. She was always loud, always full of energy, and wherever she went, she became the center of attention. From a super young age, Katie loved putting on shows, little home productions just for the family, and she dove into sports with this fierce drive to win. She had this quick wit, and her sense of humor would always make people around her smile and just feel light, you know? Her close friend Amy remembered her like this: "I feel like you don't meet someone this magnetic very often, someone who's so attractive, but also so self-aware." She could totally laugh at herself, poke fun at herself in this super easy, graceful way that made everyone around her laugh too. Her humor was contagious, and being around her, you just felt this energy that lifted your mood instantly. Katie's younger sister, Caroline, remembered her as someone who saw life as this big adventure, always ready to jump into something new and unknown. She was incredibly sweet and social, but yeah, sometimes a little bossy. Katie loved planning things, keeping control of situations, and making sure the adventures unfolded just the way she imagined them. She would often say, "So here's the plan, let's go." And, everyone usually just went along with it, no arguing, because her energy and determination were totally contagious. By 2003, Katie's life was packed with stuff. She was studying, super active in her sorority, working as a waitress to earn her own money, and had been dating her boyfriend Joe for like 8 months. Every day was full on, but she really cherished the moments, soaking up summer break before heading back to school. But things with Joe weren't all smooth sailing. Some issues started creeping in between them. Katie was standing at the edge of this whole new chapter grad school, promised fresh opportunities and challenges, while Joe was moving a few hours away to work in his family's business. These changes put a strain on their relationship, and both of them began wondering what their future together would look like, and whether they could stay close when life started demanding big decisions and compromises. But hey, it was Labor Day weekend, and everyone just wanted to set aside their problems and have a good time. Katie and Joe, along with their roommate Tracy and some friends, hit the town for a night out, checking out local bars, drinking, dancing, and just enjoying the moment. The vibe was light and fun, loud music, friends laughing, bar lights flickering. It all created this carefree feeling, if only for a little while, letting them forget the everyday stresses. As most of the bars started closing, the group headed to a local house party. There were like 30 to 40 people there, laughter and voices blending with the music, and the party went on until dawn. Security cameras at one of the bars even caught Katie and Joe holding hands, smiling, looking happy. It all seemed totally normal. But then, at the house party, something happened that ruined the night. Katie caught Joe kissing another woman. A drunken argument erupted, witnessed by a few of the guests. Emotions were high, words were sharp, and the tension in the air was palpable, made worse by alcohol and everyone being tired from the long night. Around 3 a.m., Katie left the house on her own, leaving behind the noisy crowd and a bunch of confused stares. Later, Joe and one of his friends went out to look for Katie in her car. They drove past her house and noticed the lights were off. They decided not to stop, assuming she was inside and probably asleep. When they got back to the party, Joe, totally drunk, passed out on a chair next to the same woman he had been seen with earlier. When everyone woke up, sleepy and a little disoriented, they realized Katie still hadn't returned and her car was still parked outside, cold and motionless. Katie only lived a few blocks from the house party, but that night she stepped out into nothing, just the cold, dark night. Her phone was left behind in the house, along with her purse and keys, and everything else stayed in her car. She literally walked into the night with empty hands, no way to call or get help. Tracy, knowing that the couple had been having some issues lately, couldn't just stay silent. She went straight up to Joe and asked, "Did you guys fight?" At first, Joe just said, "No," without mentioning anything about the other woman, but the tension was thick and the unease kept growing. After Tracy called everyone she could think of who might have seen or heard something about Katie and got nothing, she realized something was seriously off. She pushed Joe to be honest. Did they fight? What happened that made Katie leave the party and walk out into the night, leaving nothing but silence and darkness behind her? Finally, Joe admitted he'd been drunk, trying to downplay it, insisting that was it, that nothing serious had happened between them. His voice sounded shaky, and his eyes were just a little shadowed with guilt, but at the same time, he looked annoyed, like Katie was just trying to teach him a lesson. The tension in the air made everything feel even worse, a cold wall of misunderstanding between them, even though nobody touched anyone. Feeling the need to act fast, Tracy rushed back to their house and went straight to her room, trying to find some sense of safety and calm. Her room was untouched, quiet, almost unreal compared to the chaos of the night before. Her mum was there, asleep, hearing nothing, totally unaware of what had gone down just beyond the walls. The quiet felt deceptive, like the calm before a storm, while inside, anxiety kept pulsing through everything. They called hospitals, hoping to find any clue, but got nothing. No one matching Katie's description had been admitted. Then they turned to the police, sharing their fears that maybe Katie had gotten into trouble because of alcohol. But even here, the answer was flat. No. No hospital visits, no reports, no trace at all. Maybe they thought Katie had crashed at someone else's place that Tracy hadn't called? Or worse, maybe she'd been hit by a car, lying somewhere hurt, alone in the dark? A million thoughts were spinning in the heads of everyone involved that night. Panic grew, and the feeling of helplessness set in. It became clear there was no more time left. They had to officially report her missing, set in motion the search mechanisms that could at least keep hope alive.
20-year-old graduate student Katie Sepich was walking home from a late Saturday night party. Tonight's investigators have made the case a top priority.
We're interviewing witnesses, family, friends, anybody that may have seen her that night at the bars here in town.
Just about 200 meters away, Katie's mom, Joanne, woke up that morning with this strange, heavy feeling, an instant gut sense that something was wrong. She couldn't exactly put her finger on it, but her heart knew there was this nagging, unshakable worry. Let's call it a mother's intuition, that invisible thread that senses danger before it even becomes obvious. I had this really uneasy feeling the moment I woke up that morning, Joanne recalled. Something in the air just felt off, and I couldn't calm myself down. Then, at 2:15 in the afternoon, the phone rang, and her world shattered in just 6 words. "Did you talk to Katie today?" The police were at the student's house shortly after. They carefully circled the backyard, checking every corner, every shadow, and then they found the first clue, a clue that sent a chill through everyone there. It looked like Katie had just gotten home. The screen on the back window was damaged, like someone had forced their way through it, or pried it open, breaking the locks. On the ground lay one of her sandals, twisted in some unknown direction, and the gravel on the path looked disturbed, like someone had been dragged, leaving marks that told a story without words. The whole scene radiated this tense, uneasy feeling, like a dark cloud hanging over some invisible danger. Just a few hours earlier, anyone might have thought it was a normal day, but inspecting the house turned into the start of a major investigation, and Katie's disappearance that night grew more and more ominous, forcing everyone who knew her to realize something had happened, and now time was working against them.
As we drove up, as I glanced over, I saw what appeared to be a body, partially nude body. I was looking for signs of life.
Around 11 in the morning, a couple of hunters near an old dump east of Las Cruces, New Mexico, noticed something on the ground that made their hearts instantly freeze. It was the body of a partially clothed woman. The details were horrifying. Her back and shoulders had burn marks, and her legs were deliberately spread, like someone wanted to make the scene even more grotesque. Nearby, tire tracks suggested that a larger vehicle, maybe a pickup truck, had transported her body and dumped it in this remote, hard-to-reach spot. It wasn't until a few hours later that everything clicked. Police had received a report about the disappearance of 22-year-old Katie, and the tragic reality became brutally clear. The area was so vast and isolated that it was sheer luck the hunters happened to be there at that exact time. With the heat, wild animals, and complete seclusion, her body could have easily gone unnoticed or decomposed to the point where determining the cause of death would have been impossible. Police asked Tracy to come in, hoping she might be able to identify someone connected to Katie's disappearance. She arrived expecting standard protocol, thinking her friend might have ended up at a hospital or police station without ID and just needed to be identified. With a mix of concern and readiness, she said, "Yeah, of course." She couldn't have imagined what was waiting for her. As the officers slowly pulled back the top of the body bag, Tracy froze. Her eyes couldn't believe what they were seeing. Katie looked like she had died in terrible pain, Tracy remembered. It wasn't the face of the happy friend I knew. The autopsy confirmed the horrifying truth. Katie had been raped and strangled. A flammable liquid had been poured on her back and shoulders, and she had been partially burned before the fire went out on its own. Under her fingernails, they found someone else's DNA, clearly. She had fought for her life until the very end. There were no signs of a struggle in that area, suggesting she had likely been killed elsewhere, maybe near her home or somewhere nearby. Her watch and 2 rings, which she always wore, had also been taken by the killer. Her parents recalled that Katie had a weak, hoarse voice she couldn't scream, which made defending herself even more impossible. This had been true her whole life. Even as a child, if Katie tried to scream, the sound would come out as this weak, breathy whisper. No matter how hard she tried, it never became a real yell or alarm. That fact always left people unsettled. The idea that she couldn't call for help, even in critical moments, was eerie, like something dark was always lurking nearby. DNA from the scene was uploaded into the CODIS database, hoping for a match with a known offender. But, unfortunately, there were no matches completely unexpected for a crime this brutal with such severe injuries. It left investigators on edge, and in uncertainty the horror was obvious. But the name of the person who did it was still unknown. Investigators hoped a known criminal or some clue would pop up to lead them to the truth. Then they went back to the house where the party had been and started questioning people closest to Katie, including her roommate Tracy and her boyfriend Joe. Joe held back, not telling the detectives about the argument that night. He insisted that, even though their relationship had been complicated and being apart could be hard, he still had hope for their future together. He wanted them to get married and start a family someday, and that hope showed even in the little things of their relationship. They even looked at the rings. Joe had bought one with a gemstone corresponding to Katie's birth. It wasn't an official engagement ring, but it carried symbolic, meaning a promise, a sign of their future together. It was meant to remind her of his intentions and hopes, even amid all the confusion, frustration, and the dark circumstances that were brewing that tragic night.
You know you're here.
Yeah.
You know it's not good. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Girlfriend Katie is passed away. Okay?
Get married.
Need some clean ass.
Eyebrows went up when Joe not only admitted that they had argued that morning and that he'd drunkenly kissed another woman at the party, but also that he was the only person out of nearly 40 guests at the party who refused to provide a DNA sample.
I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more about what happened.
Just last night, she got mad at me. Came home from the bar. She got mad at me because I was kind of pulling her off my roommate's sister. She walked in and then she left. And that's the last, that's the last time I saw her. I drove by her house. Her light wasn't on, so I didn't stop. I was really drunk. I really didn't care. I kind of like that. I think I don't care about a relationship very much. I'm not really faithful as I should be.
He denied any involvement in what happened to Katie. Sure, they'd fought, and that night had gone completely wrong, but the killer?
Did you kill her? No, sir.
How did it happen?
What, sir?
Her death.
I don't know, sir. I know nothing about it. Sir, I know nothing about it. I feel so bad. Katie was everything to me.
If she was everything to you, why were you screwing around on her?
I don't know, sir. I get drunk. I'm stupid,
He had made a few calls to Katie's phone that morning, but people at the party said he actually had her phone, along with her purse and keys, at that time. The logic of those calls was a total mystery. Why even call her? Was he trying to cover himself? Or just make it look like he was searching for Katie? It just added another layer of confusion to an already chaotic night. A few days after Katie's murder, Joe went back to his family's home, 300 miles away from where the tragedy happened. Investigators asked him to return for a second interview, but he refused, saying it was impossible. His parents hired a lawyer for him, who, as expected, advised him to stay silent and not offer any extra explanations. At that point, the police focused entirely on Joe. His behavior had seemed strange from the start. On one hand, he was this guy crying to the detectives, saying he wanted to marry Katie and couldn't live without her. On the other hand, to everyone else, it looked like he was completely refusing to cooperate, dodging even the simplest questions. His lawyer claimed Joe was unhappy with how the investigation was being handled and advised him to step back. At that stage, unless investigators had probable cause, there was nothing they could do. They couldn't force him to come back, give an interview, or submit a DNA sample. Katie's family was in shock. Their relationship with Joe had always seemed positive. He genuinely appeared to adore Katie, and no one could imagine him being connected to her disappearance or her death. Her parents initially assumed it had to be a stranger, some random, horrific attack. Definitely not someone she knew. Tracy thought the same thing. Over 1,000 people showed up for Katie's funeral. Everyone who knew her felt the loss of this extraordinary young woman, whose energy, joy, and vitality had been cut tragically short. The shock and sadness swept over everyone present, leaving a lingering sense of grief and unease that couldn't be erased. Speakers were set up outside the church, so those who couldn't get in could at least hear the service. But one person was noticeably absent: Joe. When he realized that attendees were openly unhappy about him being there, he decided to stay away, keeping his emotions to himself. For Katie's family, this was another mystery. How could someone who once seemed so close act so cold and distant? They simply couldn't understand his behavior. With so many cars parked around the church, investigators continued working outside, checking tires, hoping to match any prints with those found near Katie's body, but there was nothing. A hidden camera was even installed near her grave to see if Joe might show up, but again, nothing happened. A $50,000 reward was announced for any information, and soon it was doubled, hoping someone would step forward with something crucial. The real turning point came when detectives finally got a DNA sample from Joe, taken from Katie's room. The analysis completely cleared him. He had no connection to the horrific crime. When Joe learned this, he finally agreed to provide a sample, explaining that he had held back before because he'd recently been intimate with Katie and feared his DNA would be found in her room, leading to false accusations. At last, Joe was no longer a suspect, and the police could move forward, though much time had already been lost. Detective Mark Mears admitted, "I had a hard time holding back the urge to just throttle him." What Joe could have done to help Katie's family but didn't was baffling. His inconsistent stories and lack of cooperation seemed completely unnecessary, only making the investigators' job harder. Katie's dad, Dave, agreed so much time had been wasted on Joe when things could have been resolved so much faster. Then investigators stumbled onto a potential new lead one that stretched over 1,500 miles from where the tragedy happened. 11 days before Katie was killed, a 25-year-old woman had been attacked by two men in Green Bay, Wisconsin. After an argument with her boyfriend, she left a bar and stepped out into the night, where the two men ambushed her. They forced her into the back of a truck and drove her to a remote farm. There, she endured horrific abuse. She was raped, strangled, doused with a flammable liquid, and then set on fire, left to die. She fought to survive, crawling toward the nearest house, and the homeowner immediately called 911, saving her life.
You know what the vehicle was that these people were in? Oh, now I can smell the burn on her. You can smell the burn? Yeah, you know, her flesh. Now we can see you were lit on fire. Was there one or two people? Do you know, what did they look like? Were they tall? Short?
Incredibly, the woman survived that horrific attack and was able to recall enough details about her attackers for the police to create several sketches. Her memory, though, clouded by fear and pain, turned out to be absolutely critical to the investigation. The two cases were so similar that investigators began considering a connection between them, even though they were thousands of miles apart. On the local level, police had almost nothing, so they had to check literally everything. Every fact, every tiny detail, every movement of possible suspects. As soon as the sketches of the suspects were released, the manager of the dairy farm quickly recognized them as two of his employees, 27-year-old Gregorio Morales and 23-year-old Juanito. After the attack, both men had fled the city, but Gregorio had recently returned and was back working at the farm. The manager teamed up with the police, devising a plan. He gave Gregorio a drink, kept the bottle, and handed it over to the investigators for a DNA sample. A few months later, the analysis confirmed a DNA match between Gregorio and the Green Bay victim. He was convicted of 2 counts of sexual assault, kidnapping, and first-degree aggravated assault, receiving 50 years in prison. Juanito, believed to have poured the flammable liquid on the woman before setting her on fire, was also arrested. He took a plea deal and got 70 years behind bars. But despite the similarities in the crimes, neither Gregorio's nor Juanito's DNA matched Katie's. For the detectives, it was a crushing disappointment, not just a return to square one, but a true zero. Everyone felt utterly stuck, like the case was frozen in uncertainty, with no progress possible. Time passed, and more than 2 years went by since Katie went missing, and now we need to rewind a bit to move forward in her case. 9 weeks after Katie's murder, at New Mexico State, a man armed with a knife broke into the apartment of 2 students, Anella and Leslie. The girls barely managed to lock themselves in the bathroom, hearts pounding like crazy, hands shaking from the sheer terror. They somehow got off a frantic call to 911, desperately trying to stop the unpredictable danger that was looming over them.
911 with city. What's your emergency? I was only someone trying to break into our house. What's your name? Anella. Oh. Anella? I need you to calm down, okay? You there? I don't know.
Both girls had seen this guy before. He'd been watching them, lurking around their apartment, peeking through windows. And now, he was inside. If the cops hadn't shown up when they did, who knows what could have happened. Luckily, they arrived in time and arrested the 23-year-old Gabriel Ayala. The judge let him out on bail, telling him, and I quote, "Get your stuff together," which still blows the investigators' minds. Facing 9 years in prison for the crime, Gabriel fled to Mexico and stayed on the run until 2005. He was finally caught trying to return to the US, and a year later, he was sentenced to 9 years for armed robbery with intent to commit aggravated assault. While in prison, Gabriel was required to give a DNA sample, and detectives couldn't believe it when, years later, his DNA matched the crime scene from Katie's case. Gabriel was completely unknown in Las Cruces. Nobody in Katie's circle had ever heard of him. Even his ex-wife, who filed for divorce after his robbery conviction, found a ring in his truck. "Small," she said. "I didn't even realize it was Katie's." Police asked her about the truck he likely drove that night. She said Gabriel had sold it, but she could contact the new owners. Even though the tires had been replaced, the originals were recovered, and they matched the DNA evidence from Katie's crime scene. Before the trial even began, Gabriel confessed. "That morning, I almost hit her with my truck after leaving my dealer's house to buy cocaine, he said. I stopped and offered to give her a ride home, but she refused. She was only a few blocks away. She looked pretty drunk, but said she was fine. Gabriel drove off, but minutes later he passed by her again and watched her standing on the street, trying to get into her house through the window. He asked again if she was okay. I just can't get into my house. I don't have my bag, she said. According to Gabriel, he suddenly lost control. He attacked her, raped her, strangled her, put her in his truck, drove her to a remote location, and tried to burn the evidence. Detective Mark Mears said the chances that Gabriel even saw Katie that night were insanely small. If she had stepped outside 30 seconds earlier or later, he would never have noticed her.
Today, we are rejoicing that it looks like we have the person who killed our daughter. We're so incredibly grateful for all of the hard work.
The day after Christmas, Gabrielle Ayala was formally charged with murder and kidnapping. It would have been Katie's 26th birthday. Prosecutor Susana Martinez made it clear that she had no intention of dropping the charges and no plea deals were on the table. She stated that there was no way this case would be lost, and both Gabriel and his attorneys knew it. In May 2007, Gabriel Lavilla pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, rape, kidnapping, and evidence tampering. He offered an apology to the Sepich family, claiming he didn't know why he had done it. Dave, Katie's father, said he saw and heard Gabriel's remorse to some degree, but no apology could ever change what happened. Jan, Katie's mother, said she forgave him, wanting him to find some form of redemption. Gabriel was sentenced to 69 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2043, after serving 30 years. Though given the violent nature of his crimes, early release is highly unlikely.
18. That's how many cold cases one New Mexico police department has reopened just this year. Officers say the success of Katie's Law has a lot to do with it.
Katie's family refused to let her death be just another tragedy. They threw themselves into making real change, trying to turn something unbearably painful into something that could at least help others. When Katie was found, it was still illegal in New Mexico and in nearly every other state to collect DNA at the time of arrest. DNA was only entered into the system after someone was convicted and sent to prison. I started researching, Diane said. I learned that almost every state collected DNA after a felony conviction, but at that time only 5 states allowed DNA collection during a felony arrest. I dug deeper, reading case studies, finding examples of lives that could have been saved. She soon realized that her mission went far beyond solving her daughter's murder. She became determined to push for DNA collection at the time of arrest because that simple step could literally save thousands of lives. While researching, Diane came across the case of a man named Chester Dwayne Turner. He had been arrested in California for assault with a deadly weapon, but there wasn't enough evidence to convict him, so no DNA was collected. He was later arrested 21 more times before his DNA was finally taken. When it was entered into the system, investigators discovered it matched evidence from 12 rape and murder scenes. It was clear something desperately needed to change.
You might remember the name Katie Sepich. Her name is back in the headlines. On Friday, the Senate passed Katie's Law, a bill that would help states set up DNA databases for people arrested for felonies.
Victory tonight for one New Mexico family trying to make sure their daughter's murder resulted in meaningful action. President Obama has just signed a nationwide version of Katie's Law. New Mexico has already had Katie's Law on the books since 2007. It's named for former NMSU student Katie Sepich.
A bill to expand the state's Katie's Law is also moving forward at the Roundhouse.
It's a bittersweet week for the family of Katie Sepich.
I'm proud to say that 2 days after what would have been Katie's 32nd birthday, the Senate passed our bill unanimously.
The day after Christmas was Katie's birthday. She would have been 32. And so, we still miss her every day.
Katie's Law went into effect in New Mexico in 2006. It was a monumental turning point. The law requires that anyone arrested for a violent crime submit a DNA sample. When Gabriel attacked Tanella and Leslie less than 3 months after Katie's murder, if Katie's Law had been in effect, Gabriel would have been required to provide his DNA. Yanne understood that this wouldn't have saved her daughter, but it would have ensured he was off the streets sooner. Today, 31 states have adopted Katie's Law or similar programs. In 2011, Katie's Law was expanded to cover all felony arrests. Yanne also founded DNA Saves, a non-profit dedicated to educating lawmakers and the public about the power of DNA testing. Her family, who has spent 2 decades campaigning and fighting for this cause, admits they'll never know exactly whose lives have been saved by Katie's law, but they are certain there are lives that have been spared, and that knowledge sustains them. They believe Katie's law will continue to help solve thousands of cold cases, prevent the loss of innocent lives, and protect innocent people from being wrongfully accused of crimes they did not commit.
Our camera was rolling this afternoon as Albuquerque police took in a suspect in the rape of an elderly woman. 27-year-old Francisco Perez is accused of attacking the 76-year-old victim at Alamosa Elementary School. Tonight, Albuquerque police are crediting a state DNA collection law known as Katie's Law for helping them find Perez.
Katie's younger brother, AJ, shared that he had always looked up to his older sister. She was both a mom and a sister to him at the same time. He fondly remembers trying to be her backup singer during family performances. And while she didn't always want to share the spotlight, when it came to protecting him, she never hesitated. "No one messed with me when she was around," he said. "She was fiercely protective. It's a real gut punch. You really don't know how to move forward. There's nothing but the next minute, the next breath." Katie was complex, but she was also a massive support and a pillar for me. She was always my protector, but also my best friend. Caroline, who was only 9 when she lost her sister, said, "My visual memories of life, right after losing her, are very clear, but they aren't bright. It's like that bright light of love just disappeared." Jan had to completely rethink her worldview and mindset. She said it's easy to get trapped in a cycle of what-ifs and maybe when reflecting on everything that could have happened, might have happened, or could have been different. But after losing her daughter, she learned to stop using the word "what if." It's pointless, and it only makes you sad. Face what is. Try to change what you can, but don't look back and ask, "What if?" she said. We are deeply grateful to all of our viewers and everyone who has supported us. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. I hope you found it engaging. If you'd like to support my channel and help me continue creating content, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps, and I sincerely appreciate it.